What's going on, guys? NealGuides here. Welcome back to another video. Now in today's video I'm going to go over controller settings. I'm going to show you which is the best controller settings to use, which ones I use, and I'm also going to show you some visual examples of what each one does, because you may or may not know what they do. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, but let's go straight into the video. So customize controller settings, obviously go to your main menu, go to customize controls, and the first one is the FIFA trainer. As I mentioned in my creative runs video, if you're using a FIFA trainer, you can still turn off all the arrows and everything if you want the directed runs indicator to stay on. So I'd recommend leaving this on show and then going into the game and then turning off the trainer settings, if that makes sense. So that way you're only showing the mechanics that you want to appear on the screen. Otherwise, you just don't want anything, just leave this on hidden. Now, time shooting, now look, in all honesty, shooting this year has become much better. I'll be honest, I don't really see a need for time shooting for the casual player, but if you want to take your gameplay to the next level, there's certain situations where time shooting outside the box with finesse shots or certain angles where even near post, the green time shot is still beneficial. You don't have to use this, but if you're very like a top tier competitive player, I would say Elite 3+, I'll definitely leave this on, because I do think the difference in some angles does make sense. Now the next player switch indicator, obviously you don't want this on off, otherwise you don't know if you press the L1 or the LB button to switch players, you don't know who you're switching to. But if you turn this on, you'll have that little icon, as you can see, above this player's head, and that way I can know which player I'm going to switch to. So it's really good, especially when you're defending. You know, if I press LB or L1, you know which player you're going to go to, guaranteed. Now pass block assistance, you always want to leave this on. This is just basically the AI basically helping you out. So if you think about when you're making a pass in the final third and somehow your defender just randomly intercepts the ball and he's not controlling that player, well, that is what pass block assistance is. So you most definitely want that on. There is no reason to have that on off. There is a few like top tier players that prefer to have this on off for full manual control, but I would say leave this on. For 99.99% of all of you guys watching this video, even I myself use this on. Now auto switching. Now well, I'll say there's two ones you really want to go to. There's manual and there's airballs. Now I use manual, but I recommend every single person to use airballs. If you use automatic, sometimes the game will right stick switch to a defender when you don't want it to. There could be, for an example, down the wing. You might want to switch to, for example, your left back, but the game might choose a CDM for you. So it's best to leave this on airballs. That way when you right stick switch, the game doesn't override what you do. So if you're strong with right stick switching, I'd recommend just leaving this on airballs. Do not use manual, I'll be honest, because there's a chance, especially in crosses, the game glitches out. And crosses this year are actually a bit better than last year, and it's more of a viable option. So leaving this on manual, you could get screwed. So leave this on airball. Also switching move assistance. I know many people are struggling with defending, and when you're getting the ball, you're struggling with your first touch because the game is different. I recommend leaving this on high, in all honesty. I use none, but I'll be honest, until you get used to the game, I recommend leaving this on high. Then once you kind of get the good grasp of the game and you're comfortable with, you know, the way the players are going and how their first touches are, then you can change to low, and then eventually you should either stick between none or low, one of those two. But if you're like a new player, I'll suggest high. If you're like a gold 1 player, I'll suggest low, and anything above, I'll definitely suggest none. Now jockeying, between manual jockeying and assisted jockeying. Now listen, the most important thing is manual jockeying is used. I used to use it last year. It's beneficial only if you're an elite player plus, and this is very important. Do not think you have more control. You have in theory more control, but assisted can help you more times than not. Very few players know how to utilize manual controls, because what assisted does is if you get close to the opponent's defender, or your opponent's attacker, should I say, and you got the defender, the game slows you down so you can stay with him. So you don't want to turn this off, because if you turn this off, that means your player can sometimes run past your opponent. So there's no point using manual unless you're a very, very top tier player. There's really no need to use manual. I'll be honest, even if you're an Elite 3 player, I still see there's no point. So I'd definitely say leave this on assisted for everyone here. Also flare pass, this is very much depends on how you play. Sometimes when you want to make a pass in the final third, the game used to do like a random back heel, or like, you know, do a fancy flick. Sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you just want the guy just to make a simple through ball. So you want to leave this on off, in my opinion. If you're used to the fancy passes and you're not used to holding L2 and doing them manually, then you can leave them on. But I'll say sometimes, just because you don't want to force a back heel, an incorrect one, I would say leave this on off. You can always turn it back on once you realize that maybe I should have done a fancy pass that situation. But also you can also do fancy pass using the LT and the pass button as well. Auto clearances, leave this on. There's no reason to turn this off. Obviously, your AI players perform clearances. If you're controlling your center back and the ball goes near your right back, you'll automatically smack the ball out or clear the ball. So you definitely want that on. There's no reason to turn that on off, in my opinion. Auto shots, so this is a new one as well this year. It just depends really. I'd recommend leaving this on off. I think every single person knows how to shoot in front of goal. But if you know, for example, sometimes your reactions are not that fast. Sometimes, for example, the cross might come in, you might be at the end of it, and you might not press the shoot button on time, then you can leave this on. But I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure most of you guys understand the game by now if you're watching this video, and I'll say definitely leave this on off because you don't want the game to take a shot for you when you want to do, for example, a fake shot or ball around the goalkeeper. So definitely leave that on off if you're new to the game. Player lock, this is what player lock is, as you can see on the screen. You only go into this mode when you hold the L3 and the R3 button in when you press them in together. So don't worry about leaving this on because you're not really going to activate it unless you're doing kickoffs. But apart from that, leave this on. There's no reason to turn this off. This is the new creative runs feature. By the way, if you haven't watched my creative runs video, I got a fantastic video on creative runs explaining everything in that. The next one is contextual agile dribbling. Now, contrary to belief, many people are saying leave this on. I'll say leave on off. You don't always want to enter contextual agile dribbling when you have the ball because the game will basically decide for you when to use agile dribbling. Now sometimes you might not want to use agile dribbling, you might want to use manual dribbling or normal left stick dribbling. You're better off leaving this on off and then manually using agile dribbling using the R1 or the RB button. So if you hold the R1 or the RB button, you basically activate agile dribbling. So there's no reason to leave this on unless you're a newcomer to the game. But I recommend leaving this on off and then manually using agile dribbling when you want to. So that way you don't get the game screwing you over and automatically doing an animation that you don't want to do, especially trying to make a pass, and it really could screw you up in those situations. Assisted headers, I'll leave this on. There is a fact that you can leave this on off. If you are delving into the advanced crossing, you can leave this on off. But I recommend for most of you guys just to leave this on. Right stick switching, there's two. There's player relative and ball relative. In my opinion, ball relative is still the better one this year. For some reason, I don't know, let me know in the comments down below, but for some reason, player switching is worse than last year in this game. I don't really know. Sometimes you go into the wrong player. I thought they improved that, but it looks to be still in the process. Player relative basically is where the player is the reference point. Ball relative is where the ball is, and that's the reference point. So imagine the 12 o'clock is like the up, and then so if you're using ball relative, wherever the ball is on the pitch, you flick the right analog stick to wherever the ball is to the player. Whereas player relative is the player that's actually chosen, and you will flip the right analog stick after that. So let's say you want to switch to another defender, you'll switch from the defender that's already chosen, and you flick the right analog stick to the other defender. So you can use either one. I use ball relative. I'm in the 0.001% minority. I do think genuinely it's better for most players because player relative just moves around and bounces around too much. It's very hard to keep up with player relative, so I'd recommend ball relative in my opinion. But if you're used to player relative, don't bother changing it. If you're used to player relative, just stick with it. There's no point in it. But if you're a newcomer or you're really struggling with player switching, I'd recommend delving into ball relative. Give it a go. It'll take some time to get into, but once you learn it, it's amazing. You know, you actually get better switching, more efficient switching, and sometimes the game helps you more than not. It's more accurate in that sense. Ground pass assisted leaves on assisted. There's no reason to leave this on manual or semi in my opinion. Through ball, again, I'll leave this on assisted. Shot assistance, again, assisted. Manual doesn't really work how you think. Manual is basically the old school FIFA, the way I used to play FIFA. That means you have to hold the left analog stick basically in the middle all the time and like barely move it for it to be a shot. So you basically just want this on assisted. You don't want any of these on manual, keep them all on assisted. Now cross assistance, you want to leave this on semi because assisted, basically the ball just, if you cross the ball, AI basically decides where the ball is going to be. But with semi, depending on how much power you use, so for example, the more power you use, basically, so let's say you're crossing the ball now, if you do a cross, the more power you use, the further it will go to the far post. If you just use a little bit, it will go near post. So you want to use semi, so that way you control where the ball or where the cross is actually going, if that makes sense. Lob pass assistance, this might be the only one where manual is actually not a bad option. If you used to, in previous videos, using lob pass assistance on manual, I'd recommend leaving this on manual. But for most players, if you never used manual before, just keep it on assisted. But I think this year, manual is a difference. If you're used to using lob pass assistance manually before, I think with how OP lob passes are over the top, I think it introduces a new dynamic into the game. I would recommend leaving it on manual. But for the most people that have never used it before, just leave it on assisted. Change to manual will probably screw you up more times than actually helping you. Save assisted leaves on assisted. Now analog sprint. Now if you just imagine in your hand you're holding a controller, okay? Now your R2 or the RT button, okay? Think of it like an acceleration pedal on a car, okay? When this is on off, think about it, as soon as you press the acceleration pedal just a little bit, you're going to go to top speed all the time. So imagine you're sitting in your car, you're driving, you touch the gas pedal just a little bit, you go down to full dead zone, full acceleration. So that's one thing you need to remember. If you leave this on, it basically works like how it does in a car. So imagine like you're driving your car and you just tap the gas pedal just a little bit and you stay like 10 miles per hour. That's what analog sprint does, but it's the same thing with your right trigger, your R2 button. So if you tap the R2 button just a little bit, well, your player's going to be running just ever so slightly. If you completely go down, they'll be running 100%. Now, why would you want this on? Some people, they like to use left stick dribbling with analog sprints. I'll be honest, the amount of players that I know actually use this, even in the pro scene, is a handful, if that makes sense. So I would recommend leaving this on off, because you want your players to be running 100% sprint speed all the time. As soon as your player makes a through ball in behind, you're going to make sure you're running onto that at full speed. The only reason why you might want on is if you use left stick dribbling and you use the run button, and you very much know how to use it and how much power to use. But that's what I would say. Definitely leave this one off. I would say for almost every single person watching this video, par like 2 people, maybe 3 at most. Defending, you cannot use legacy defending on FUT champions and I think rivals and squad battles. You have to use tactical defending. So if you're an old legacy player, if you are going to play FUT champions or ultimate team, you have to use tactical defending, but you can use legacy defending in offline game modes. But I recommend using tactical just to keep everything systematic and the same. But if you are playing FUT champions or ultimate team, I think even online seasons, if I'm not mistaken, you have to use tactical defending. And the last one is pass receiver lock. This late and early. Early means basically imagine you have the ball with your cam. As soon as you make the pass, you press X once. The game will automatically select the striker and you can control the striker immediately. If you have this on late, basically what this means is as soon as you press the pass button, the game will select the striker only once the pass is being made. So why would you want this on early? Well, there's a very few use cases for this, but let's say, for example, you want to control your striker, use a super cancel and kind of run towards the ball manually to get the ball in front of your defender. But I'll be honest, most people are not going to do that. You want to leave this on late, because let's say, for example, you have the ball with your cam. Let's say you have a left wing and right wing running down the wing. Let's say, for example, you want to pass the ball to your left wing, and let's say you realize, oh no, my opponent's defender is now marking that. Before the animation kicks in, you can quickly flick the left down long stick to the opposite direction and go to the right wing. So you could actually change your passing option with late. If you have this on early, as soon as you press the X button and as soon as you aimed your pass, that's it. You're locked in. You can't get out. But with late, if you make a pass, unless you realize, oh my god, my opponent is marking that area, you could always change last minute with the left down long stick. So I'd recommend leaving this on late for every single person. But that is just the controller settings to use. In terms of normal controller settings, you can just use your regular classic controls. I use my controls, which is my ISS Pro Evolution controls, or PES controls, I think they're called. I don't know if it's the same now, where squares to shoot. I prefer square or X to shoot. I prefer this being a shoot button because the right analog stick is next to the shoot button, so it's easier to perform the shot. And that's why it increases your reaction time. So you press the shooter button as opposed to moving it to the B or the circle button. It does take longer. I do use the RB button to sprint as well. So I can't. So don't forget, if you use the RB button to sprint, you cannot use analog sprint because it has to work as kind of like an acceleration pedal. And obviously with the RB button, it's kind of like your 0 or 100. There's no 10%, 20%. It's just like you press it and that's it. You activate the button. And for defending, if you want to become an advanced user, I'd recommend moving the teammate contain to either the 8. So if you're on classic, I'd recommend moving the teammate contain to either the A button or to another button. The reason why you want to use A, because let's be honest, contain is useless. You should be never using contain, and that means your A button is then redundant. I personally, what I do is I use my tackle button on A, because again, the A button is much closer to the right analog stick as opposed to B or circle. So when I'm using the right analog stick, I'm switching players. I can quickly press the A button and tackle very, very quickly to improve reaction times again. But anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. Take it easy. I'll have a more advanced video explaining this in detail coming up soon. But thank you very much for watching this. Take it easy and I'll catch you next time. Don't forget, if you do like this video, to leave a comment down below what kind of videos you do want to see. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll be uploading a new tutorial every single day, and see some more of my tutorials on my channel, or you can see from the playlist on the screen right now. Thank you very much for watching, boys. Take it easy and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.